It's your favorite dark man back here with another one. Now, I have been using the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 Lite for the last 10 days. I have some thoughts and impressions of this device, and ultimately by the end of this video, I will tell you why I chose this device and also why this might be the device for you to get in 2021. So let's get into it. So let's start by talking about the screen. This is a 6.7-inch Super AMOLED display with very thin bezels on the borders of this phone. Now, in addition, they've also gone for a smaller punch hole cutout for the front-facing camera. And this is a very good aesthetic choice because not only does it allow you to not be invaded by this big hole in the middle of the top of your phone, but also it allows for symmetry with the status bar on the top of the screen. The display also houses an optical fingerprint sensor, which is not as fast as an ultrasonic sensor that you would find on a flagship Samsung device. It's also not as fast as face unlock, but it's quite efficient. This was one of the hardest parts of setting up this phone. It actually took me about 2 hours to complete this. I found it to be a little pressure sensitive at times, and also it tends to be a little tricky with the positioning of this sensor, so I really don't know where it is sometimes. But over time you start to get used to it, and sometimes it's about positioning, sometimes about pressure sensitivity, just so it can read your fingerprints in the best way possible. Now, talking about the construct of this device, now the screen is made of Corning's Gorilla Glass 3. The borders are made out of aluminum and the back is made out of Glastic. Now, for those of you that do not know what Glastic is essentially a combination or the fusion of glass and plastic. So this allows you to retain the scratch-resistant properties of glass and the durability of plastic. And this is one of the first compromises you will find with this device. So this won't allow you to do wireless charging. It doesn't have an IP rating, but I think this works to your advantage in a sense, because whereas a premium device might drop and because of a glass back you would be worried, this really takes out or eliminates that whole conundrum you may have, so to speak. This is a dual SIM device, so this will allow you to use a nano SIM as your first SIM, as well as either a micro SD card or a second SIM card, depending on your preferences. Now, in terms of the internal storage, this comes with 128 gigabytes, or actually 106 when you factor in the OS and everything that goes into making the phone what it is. Now, whilst you won't get a 256 gigabyte variant, you will have the option to expand your storage up to 1 terabyte, depending on whether or not you actually want to use the expandable storage option and not a second SIM with your device. Now, this comes with a 4500 mAh battery, and it's actually tied with the biggest battery life you will find in a Samsung Galaxy Note device, the other device being the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra. Now, in addition, this will also support super fast charging at 25 watts, which I have been very impressed by. This gives me about 20% in 10 minutes, 35% in 20 minutes, and 50% in 30 minutes. And then it fully charges at about 1 hour and 22 minutes. So you don't have to spend too much time with charging this thing, especially if you are starting from a certain percentage point. So this will easily give you full day's use with no worries about having to charge in the middle of the day. It's actually giving me a screen time average of about 6 hours per day. Now, talking about the internals of this device, I found it pretty cool that this phone was actually made on February 27th. So while this is a 2020 device, this phone has really been in existence for about a month. This phone comes with 6 gigabytes of RAM, as well as an Exynos 9810 chip, which actually is about 3 years old at the time of recording this. But despite the fact that it's a 3-year-old chipset, the combination is very solid. It's very easy to get into apps very quickly, and it handles tasks like a breeze. There's no problems at all. This phone actually comes with Android 11 as well as One UI 3.0. I've only used One UI 3.1 in the store when I was looking at the Samsung Galaxy A72, which was also another option I could have gotten at this price point, but I decided to go for this. But One UI 3.0 has been very fun to use so far. I like everything from the way the notification shade has a bit of a translucent take on it, and how apps pop up like this. As you see, someone's texting me right now. So it has a very good take on it. It's very streamlined to the point where it's not like some phones where you can tell, okay, this is stock Android features, these are the OS features. Everything is so intertwined now, and it's very hard to see the separation between Android and the One UI feature, or the One UI OS, I should be saying. Now, going back to the construct of this device, this has 2 microphones, one on the top and on the bottom, as well as a mono speaker. And I'm finding this very hard to believe that it's a mono speaker. Granted, the quality of this thing is very good. Now this phone comes with NFC and I believe MST. MST is that ability that can mimic credit card impulses, and I found this very interesting, probably in a very accidental way, with my ECG prepaid card. It actually picked it off as a smart tag, but it said it was an empty tag, so it wasn't exactly recognized. But it was very interesting to see that it could interact with something as fickle as an ECG prepaid card. Now let's talk about what makes this phone a Note device, the S Pen. The S Pen on this device has actually been able to bring the essential features of the S Pens or the Note series phones from previous generations into this phone. The only thing I found it doesn't come with is the air gestures that were introduced with the major Note 10 line, being the Note 10 and the Note 10 Plus. But these were quite gimmicky and they were a little hard to understand, and I don't think most people have actually used it, especially when it came to camera usage and all of that stuff. This S Pen also has Bluetooth functionality and it has an internal battery. Now what I have found is I could pull this pen out of the phone and use it for close to about 30 minutes, but when the battery ran low, it would recharge in under 4 seconds, which is very fast, and you can continue doing whatever you were doing before the battery ran low. Now let's talk about the most important feature to most of our lovely ladies out there. I am talking about the cameras on this device. Now it's a triple camera setup on this device with a fourth module serving as the flash module. It's a 12 megapixel affair all the way around. You have a 12 megapixel wide or main camera, a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, and a 12 megapixel telephoto camera. Also, you have your front camera, which is 32 megapixels. Now, in terms of video recording quality, the rear cameras will shoot up to 4K at 60 frames per second, whilst the front camera can shoot at 4K at 30 frames per second. Now, in my opinion, I wouldn't use 4K at 30 frames per second on the front-facing camera, primarily because when you actually record with it, it comes out looking like 15 frames per second, and it's barely usable unless, of course, there's not too much going on with your video recording at that set time. I have found video stabilization to be very good on this device. You will get super steady mode only shooting at 30 frames per second at 1080p, but even beyond that, when you're shooting at 60 frames per second at 1080p, the video stabilization is very solid and you will be very impressed with what you get. Of course, when you're using 4K at 60 frames per second, you don't have the best stabilization, so you really want to use that for steady shots. In terms of photo quality, I have been very impressed with the optical image stabilization I have gotten from this phone. I actually took a lot of the shots you see on the screen in traffic and a moving car, and it does its best to capture detail very quickly. There is also a pro video mode with this phone, so it's pretty good in manipulating certain values with ISO and white balance and all those things. There is super slow-mo at 240 frames per second with slow motion shots at 120 frames per second. My favorite feature to use so far has been hyperlapse. However, there was something I noticed, and it was the fact that when you're recording video and you are going in between the zoom levels, there is a certain noticeable lag, and this is really because of the changing lenses you get when you are recording or zooming in. Also, when taking pictures, I did find that edge detection wasn't exactly the greatest you would find. It is usable, but it's not as sharp as it would be on some flagship devices. But it does do well with macro shots. It can actually detect when you are taking shots of food, of architecture, of even plants and flowers. And I think it does well to blur out certain details that you may not need, especially in those macro shot situations. The biggest challenge did come with night mode. Now, when you're in a very dark environment, you do see some choppiness with the video, and it doesn't really do its best job there. Edge detection is all over the place. It tries to do the best it can to maintain quality, but you will find some things are choppy. A lot of things come out soft, but the pictures are usable, especially when it's stable. It does take some time to get those pictures in focus and to generate full images that are well lighted for you. So it's not the snappiest, it's not the sharpest, but you will get some usable images. But I wouldn't recommend shooting in very, very low light situations, because then your images could come apart and it wouldn't be the best. Now on to the reason I chose this phone. Now I know a lot of people might have expected me to get maybe a Note 20 Ultra and S21 Ultra. The truth is, first things first, I was on a budget of $500, so that was going to place me squarely within 3 phones: the S20 FE, this one, and the A72. Now, I didn't choose the S20 FE because I have heard from a lot of phone dealers that this phone can just turn off on you. I don't know if it's a widespread issue. And also, it didn't come with a headphone jack. This phone has a 3.5mm headphone jack. Now, I know some of you go like, hey, you could use an adapter and all that stuff. And that is true. But knowing who I am, I could easily misplace it. And I'm not exactly the best person to be around when I misplace something. So yeah, I can become the most annoying person. But essentially, it was okay. Being that I use a lavalier mic that uses a 3.5mm headphone jack, I'd rather go with something that has that. And so I was down to 2 options, which was the A72 and this device. And ultimately, why I chose this phone over the A72 was a number of things. Now, the unboxing experience was one of them for me. This has a bit more of a premium unboxing experience as compared to the A72, which looks kind of generic. The A72 is a mid-range phone. This is a high-end phone. It's kind of a bridge product in between mid-range and the flagship, because Samsung devices, when you look at the price gaps, can be it's a little wide in that respect. So this is more of a bridge device. So you're getting the best of both worlds in that respect. Aside that, the A72 looks good on paper. 8GB of RAM, 120Hz display refresh rate. It has a Snapdragon chip, which is actually pretty good when it comes to battery life and image processing. But one of the funny things I realized was it can't shoot in 4K at 30 frames per second. And also, there was this funny thing I saw with a lot of reviews where there would be this warp with the image stabilization. That's the electronic image stabilization, or EIS. So it would do this thing where the background would warp a little, and it's not exactly the most consistent look. And I might have to take those extra steps with my editing software to make sure it's stabilized. But even in that context, it could still go very wrong. And aside the fact that it's a mid-range device, this is high-end, I thought about it and I was like, you know what, let me just go with this. So here's my full take on this. If you're looking for a phone that will give you the best possible features without breaking the bank, if you're looking for something that will give you the best productivity, if you're looking for something that will take you closer to flagship, I think you should go for this phone. I think you'll be very impressed when you use it. The battery life is great. It's been tested, it's been over a year. And you are not going to have any problems with regards to whatever is in your phone. You actually know what's in this phone. With the A72, there have been debates about what Snapdragon chip is in there, because there was a Snapdragon 732 or something like that, but benchmark showed a very different Snapdragon chipset, and that has generated some controversy on the side. Alright, so that's going to be it. Post comments down below. Let me know what you think about this phone. Please do subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Till then, take care. I am the Dark Man, and I am out.